You've been told that if you just wake up earlier, track your habits more closely, or find the perfect parenting hack, the exhaustion will finally lift. But what if the very things that you're doing to fix your life are the ones draining your battery? Today, we're peeling back that curtain on why high-performance wellness is failing parents and how to move from being a human doing back to a human being. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy, my friends. Today, I'm going to answer some questions that a listener has reached out with about wellness. She says she listens to the show regularly, but she did not want to come on personally, which is completely fine. And I would love for people that are brave enough to come on the show in the future, so reach out to us if that's something that you want to do. But the reason I decided to answer some of these questions today is because it mimics what my clients are saying to me. And whenever I see a pattern like that, I decide it's an important thing to address. And many of these things I've been thinking about myself and naturally diving into because I see the gap and I'm always looking to improve my own personal health and wellness as well as that of my family. So let's jump into it. Today's episode is called The Data Detox. Are your smart devices stealing your intuition and joy? Some of this has to do with that, but we're lumping several of those wellness questions that have been coming up for a lot of people into this episode. So it's not just about the data, but about many of these wellness things and how it relates to mental health. Just so you know, if you're wanting to submit questions, I ask that you email us about 10 to 15 questions. I might modify them slightly to appeal to our audience, but this is generally what was asked by our podcast listener. She wanted to know about something that she'd heard called the over-optimization backlash. Now, I actually hadn't heard that term before, so I went and looked it up. So this is a growing movement of people who are just exhausted by the self-improvement space where it feels unattainable. And I completely get that. Honestly, in the very beginning of my podcast episodes, I feel like I was stuck in that trap a little bit. Do this, then do this. And I'm getting out of that into something else. I'll go into something else a little more as I answer these questions, but I've been doing this training just because I'm curious about it, about somatic body work, where you are way more tuned into your body and you use this information in a counseling setting. And it's been very helpful, not only for my clients, but for me as well. So I'll go into that more in a second. But again, back to this over-optimization backlash. For years, we've been told if we have the right app, if we have the right device, or the right morning routine, whatever it is, the right supplement, that we are going to finally feel fixed. We'll feel better. We're treating our lives more like a machine that we can upgrade, but instead that's actually stripping away our humanity. It feels more like an algorithm or a formula instead of an actual human with all sorts of things that are impacting how we are feeling, thinking, and responding. Despite all the extra information we have, sometimes we still feel just as confused, and honestly more so when we have so much more information, so much more data tracking, but it's not leading to greater results. So it's shifting from asking ourselves, how can I be more productive, to instead, how can I feel more alive? And that is why I started this podcast, because I've been thinking about these questions for a long time. It's not just how can I be happy, but how can I be more fulfilled? So again, back to this somatic training, I've been asking myself more as I've been going through hours and hours of this training. what my body and even me personally, what my spirit wants and need more of. And I fall into that trap just like clients do, where I write down these lists of to-dos and it can just feel overwhelming. Then I realize that each evening I'm so exhausted. I'm running on fumes and I'm more reactive to the people that I love the most. Now, on my best days, I shelf that a little bit more. Like I was just talking to a client about this morning in session, and we were talking about things that work better for us. Again, tuning into the body. And I said, okay, you love your to-do list. We all do. It gives us a little dopamine hit when we do it. But how do you feel when you write down 20 things and you don't get to them? She said she has this app that tells her what she needs to do every 30 minutes. And by the end of the day, she's filled with such loathing because she doesn't get to most of those things. So we talked about how she could shift it according to what her body is telling her, or even her spirit is telling her, and do that instead. So we keep tuning back into what her body wants, what her spirit wants, what her soul wants, whatever verbiage you want to use here. And I've been starting to ask myself that more and more. So instead of it being like, okay, I got all 20 things done, you could do something else. For example, we explored with this client, instead of doing a to-do list, you can do an I want to list. That's one shift you can make. Or I suggested you could even do, instead of a daily list, where some people that really struggle, that can be really helpful. But for those that are high performers and very hard on themselves, it can be a weekly list. I'm going to write down 20 things for this week. But I can just choose 3 things a day. And if I have more time, great, I can do that. But it's not a failure if I don't. I just do my big 3 and I worry about that. And I can shift it. Like, I'm not really feeling like tackling taxes right now. I'm going to do a different one today, and that's okay. By the end of the week, I will have many of these done, and if not, I can shift them into next week. And I also suggested not saving those harder things, but maybe doing 1 or 2 of them that are like that book suggests, Eat That Frog, and getting those ones that are less desirable done maybe first, so you don't feel such tension throughout the day. Anyway, that's just a small, simple hack to tune in more to what your body needs and not so much the devices. And we'll be going back into that more in a minute. Another question she asked me is, how can I tell if my self-improvement is actually causing me more stress? So I went into this already. But when I was talking to my client, I noticed over and over again she was saying, should. Oh, I should have done that. I didn't do that. I should have done this. And she just went on and on with these shoulds. And I helped her become more aware of those. And I said, whenever there's a should, and you probably have heard this before, but that indicates there's shame. And when there's shame, get curious. Don't go to self-loathing, self-criticism, all of those things. But I wonder why I did that. I wonder what my body needed. I wonder what my spirit needed. I wonder why I'm feeling A, B, or C. And again, getting curious and pausing enough to deliver. Like I noticed the first half of the week, I'm like, I'm just going to bust it out. I'm going to get these things done so I can relax the second half of the week. But then what ends up happening is the second half of the week, I'm like, I'll just do a little bit more so then I can really relax. But then ultimately I have a half a day to relax and I'm not taking those micro breaks to really regenerate. So I am so much more fatigued with my family, and that's not who I want to be. That's not living at the fulfilled life that I want. And I'm sure that resonates with many of you. So maybe you notice yourself saying a lot of shoulds. Maybe you missed a workout, or you didn't meditate, or you didn't do your morning routine. And I love morning routines. I love exercise. I love it all. But are we going to that loathing again if we don't? So personal story here, I definitely do that, especially if I don't do a workout. I generally am pretty consistent with that, but sometimes I do it to my own detriment. Like, for example, this last week, I was like, oh, I didn't get my Friday workout because I was going to do Saturday. But then we ended up helping 3 people move, which is a little bit unusual. But in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I should have done that. And then I'm like, wait, let's get curious. Let's tune into the body. And even though I didn't track it with my fitness tracker, and again, talking about devices here, I realized How much have I been moving by helping people move and vigorously going back and forth? Not only that, even if I didn't do that, I'm taking a break, and that's okay. Sometimes we need that. We don't have to be so rigid. Maybe you notice yourself doing the same thing. That's just one example here. If you are doing that where you cannot step away from it, that moves into over-optimization that can really detract from feeling fulfilled. So if your wellness tools become just another set of chores on your already overflowing to-do list, then they stop being therapeutic and start being a source of that cortisol spiking pressure, and that is not what we want. So take a moment to step back. Do you feel compelled to do these things? Are you saying should like crazy? Or are you filled with that self-loathing? If so, maybe it's time to take those micro breaks to tune in with your body and listen to that over your apps, over your fitness trackers, whatever they may be. Another thing the listener talked about was neuro wellness, and she wanted to know a little bit more about that and if I'd spoken to it before. And this is another term that I wasn't as familiar with, so I went and did some research on it. For those of you that have listened long enough, you know that I'm not a big fan of the news ever since COVID. I scaled way back from being inundated with the news, social media, all of those things. I haven't grown my social media nearly as much because there's a conflict there for me. I don't want my listeners to overly be on it. I don't want to be on it much. I turn off all of my notifications. I do many of these things to live a more simple, fulfilled life. And so because of that, I'm not always up on the trends unless it's something that I learn in a training or otherwise. So I went and researched this one as well. This is essentially what I'm doing anyway and what I've been talking about. Neuro wellness moves the focus from the mind to the body. So for a very long time, CBT has been very popular. So cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's still helpful for things like anxiety. Definitely something that I use as a tool with my clients. And I find that it's only so helpful. Like it seems like a surface level help, not that deeper level help. Like your unmet needs, that inner child, those deep wounds that prevent things from healing if you just stay at the surface and focus only on thoughts and not those deeper underlying reasons that thought is there. Again, it can help, but it doesn't usually get to the core of things. So what neuro wellness does is they move away from that thinking and more to their bodies. They recognize that they're stuck in that fight or flight mode, and instead they focus on that vagus nerve stimulation. Maybe many of you have heard about it, or doing things that can calm down a bit more. So cold exposure, humming, that's been a big one that's talked about, at least in my sphere. I don't know what you're listening to. And these are things that can help regulate the body before we even try to address the thoughts. Those underlying things that I talk about are very helpful. But even before all of this, it's tuning into what's going on in the body. I first started learning about this actually in EMDR and trauma therapy because I hadn't even thought about where I was carrying stress or pressure. And that's one of the questions. It's like, where are you feeling it in your body? And my counselor kept asking that. I'm like, I don't know. And I started to notice more and more those same areas coming up in my shoulders and my neck, but mostly shoulders, I think. And I have clients, and it's interesting. It's so case by case. There's many that just feel it in their gut. They feel it in their chest. And we do some work and we recognize there's a reason for that. But I digress. That's another episode. Again, just think of neuro wellness as a little bit more of a body awareness or somatic work where we focus on that over thoughts. And that is big right now. Even though I wasn't aware of this term or what's on social media, I'm very much aware of this in the mental health realm and that somatic work that I'm doing with so many clients. The other thing the listener wanted to know about is my thoughts on digital wellness and what to use, what not to use, and if it's helpful. And this was really interesting because in the past I felt like they were quite helpful, but I just recently had an experience myself where I was feeling a lot of fatigue, a lot of burnout, overwhelm, just what a lot of other listeners are saying and feeling, despite doing a lot of those things like taking supplements, doing the happy light, all of the supposed tos or things that I wanted to do to improve my mental health and wellness. And I do believe that these things are helping, and they only go so far sometimes. So I was thinking about all of these symptoms and I'm like, okay, this looks like burnout, but it could be some other things. What else could it be? And so I was trying to do those things to see if that's what it was. And it wasn't really shifting that much. It did help a little, but not as much as I would think. So I was trying to fill in those gaps a little bit. And when I was researching it, I realized that this was likely symptoms of overtraining because of some of the wellness goals that I had. I was like, okay, maybe I need to scale back a little bit and do some lighter workouts for a little while. And then when I went to go look at my trackers, like I have a couple different ones on my watch, on my Fitbit, and I have another one called My Zone that I use for my gym. And one of them was saying, oh, you're at risk for overtraining. And the other one, Fitbit, was saying, I'm at risk for undertraining. And I was like, how is that possible? And so I went and looked and I realized your phone, like the health app, if you have an iPhone, doesn't track a lot because you're not holding that phone all the time. And the Fitbit, I don't know why that's not working as well as that should be, but it's not taking everything into consideration and communicating with the other devices, even though I've looked and it's supposed to be, but it's not. And so by not doing as many steps, for example, they thought that I wasn't working out as hard, when in actuality, I was doing more stairs. So that's a little bit slower, but steep incline. And my heart rate was more elevated than if I were just to be getting more steps. So there's all these different things that are part of that it wasn't considering. So if I would just be focusing on one of those, say Fitbit, and I was just listening to that, I would have been missing key information. But then I was thinking about other professionals and leaders in the industry when it came to hormones. And I realized I'm in that bracket for perimenopause. And all of those symptoms also lined up with it. So there might be several reasons why I've been feeling this way. So instead of going straight to the shoulds, like I'm not doing this and beating myself up for this, just so many of my clients do when they come into session, I took that curious route. I wonder what it could be. Let me do some research. Let me see if I can get some answers. Let me tune in more to my body and see what it wants. So I did start with that research and tried to get answers there, but then I went back to my body and I said, what do I think this is? What does this intuitively feel like to me? And to me, it feels like a hormone thing, and it does feel like overtraining. So I have been scaling back, which is also part of why I let that Saturday workout go, even though I ended up moving quite a bit more with helping people move and doing that hard labor. But it's also giving myself permission to have lighter workouts with a lower heart rate and letting go of what those apps say. These apps often replace our human intuition and even connection with data that may not even be accurate. When we rely on a ring to tell us how we slept or an app to tell us how to breathe, we stop listening to ourselves and we stop seeking co-regulation from other people as well. Thank you for spending these moments with me today. I know how precious your time is, and I'm grateful to be part of your journey toward a more energized life. If today's conversation about reclaiming your time resonated, I'd love for you to join our community more deeply by signing up for our weekly emails at fulfillmenttherapy.org. You can also reach out to us directly at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org, especially if there's a specific stressor that you're navigating and you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Or better yet, just email us if you're brave enough to jump in on a free coaching call that we could turn into a podcast episode to help others just like you. Stay tuned for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.